Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Oxford Board of Selectmen. It is November 1st, 2022. I'd like to read into the record that in accordance with Mass General Law 30A, Section 20, I am advising all those in attendance this evening that the meeting is being recorded by the Town of Oxford. In addition to the Town of Oxford, Robert King of Cobog Ave is recording the meeting as well. And I'd like to start off by saluting the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, first thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes dated October 12th, 2022 and 2018. I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I will make that motion.
Second.
Is there any comment, discussion, anything? Okay, being none, I'll call for the vote. Amy?
Yes.
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Let the record show 5 in the affirmative. Minutes approved. The next thing was a public hearing, which has been removed. It's been canceled. That issue has been dealt with. And the next public hearing is at 7:15. So what I thought we would do is handle some other business until 7:15. So maybe at this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Amy. And Amy's been working on adjusting our policy. So Amy, if you want to take over and tell us what you got for today, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. So the first one we have on our list today is policy number 1602, the police chief holidays. So this policy is from 1976, and it states that if the police chief on any holiday when he is called into work, if an emergency arises, shall file a written report of the emergency with the Board of Selectmen. This is extremely old, and it's covered in his policy, so I don't believe that we need this one anymore.
So it's a duplication.
Yes.
Okay, let me call for the vote, let me call for a motion to remove policy 1602 regarding police chief holidays.
I make a motion to rescind policy 1602, police chief holidays.
Second.
All right, any discussion? There being none, I'll call for the vote. Amy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I'll vote yes. Let the record show 5 in the affirmative. Policy has been eliminated.
Policy 1602B, police chief overtime, outside work, and holidays. This one states that the police chief does not get paid for overtime and holidays. Again, 1977. This is currently now covered in his contract, so I don't believe that this is applicable at this time anymore either.
Okay, I will call for a motion to remove policy 1602B from the policy handbook.
I make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Amy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I vote yes. Let the record show 5 in the affirmative. Policy is no longer, policy 1602B is no longer active.
The next policy on our list is policy number 2003, which is also from 1977. This policy states that any person to be hired as an employee of the town should be a resident of the town. This kind of violates our equal opportunity employment laws, so I believe we should rescind this.
Okay, I will call for a motion to eliminate policy number 2003.
I will make that motion.
Looking for a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Robert?
Mr. Chairman, to clarify, I believe it says that if we're going to hire an employee that's not a non-resident, that the Board of Selectmen has to authorize it, not that we can't hire them. Isn't that correct?
If they cannot find a person who meets the requirement of the position, approval should be first sought from the Board of Selectmen prior to hiring.
I don't,
Yes.
are we certain that that actually violates equal opportunity law? Because we could still hire people. They're just, you just need the Board of Selectmen to authorize it, right?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the Board of Selectmen do not hire people. That's one of the first things. That's why you have a manager to do that. Secondly, I do believe it shows bad faith in terms of being able to consider ourselves as an equal opportunity employer. If you put out the stipulation, this is not a contractual agreement like the town manager's contract, and you shouldn't be confusing those two. In this day and age, by saying and stating that they should be a resident actually makes a very affirmative statement against the whole notion that you're looking at people's qualifications, not that residency, when you're hiring individual employees. And it doesn't make sense to keep it because the Board of Selectmen are not in that position to do that.
Well, so Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Sure.
to the town manager, the Board of Selectmen wouldn't be selecting the employee. I believe the town manager would still be selecting, and then if the employee wasn't a resident, then that would,
Robert, that was
Or-
1977. You don't hire employees. The town manager hires the employees. So we don't go to you to ask you about whether they should be hired because they live in town or don't live in town. So, she asked me, I didn't bring it up, but I said it's actually very antiquated. It's not anything that I would keep on the books because it's not relevant. It's not relevant within the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen, and it certainly isn't relevant in terms of the current equal opportunity laws, where you really do want to show that it's all about the qualifications of the person, not who they know and where they live.
yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd just like to point out to the manager that this is kind of a touchy subject for some residents. That's why I want kind of a discussion so people understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and that
Okay.
there's a reason for it. Because, for some people, they may feel like they weren't given an opportunity, and they might not understand these issues.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully disagree with that position. We don't, in employment and management, look at the politics of the argument. We look at their qualifications and whether we're actually providing people equal opportunity. Certainly, if we look at someone's qualifications and in terms of equal opportunity, we think they meet the qualifications of the job and they happen to reside in town, that's absolutely wonderful, and we would give them every consideration for that. But, at the end of the day, you have the ability to vote in favor or not to keep it, so I would just also want to say that.
Anything else? All right, that being said, I will call for the vote. A yes means we will eliminate policy number 2003. Amy?
Yes.
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 Yes. Let the record show 5 in the affirmative. Policy number 2003 is no longer in effect. Go ahead, Amy, you're on a roll here.
I am. The next policy is policy number 2302, Worcester County Commissioners Advisory Board Delegate. This is from 1994, and it states that the Board of Selectmen shall designate a delegate to the Worcester County Commissioners Advisory Board. This board no longer exists, so that makes this pretty irrelevant.
Okay. I will call for a motion to eliminate policy number 2302 from our policy book.
I will make that motion.
Second.
We have a double second.
It's okay.
Thanks, Tim.
I'll shut up.
All right, any discussion? I will call for the vote.
Yes.
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 I will say yes. Let the record show 5 in the affirmative. Policy 2302 is now no longer in effect. And the last one, Amy.
Policy number 2304 regards to warrants holding of. This is from 1994. It states that except for payroll, one member of the Board of Selectmen may initial an item on the warrant excluding payroll and have that item held for 1 week. We no longer approve warrants, and the state law grants the town accountant the only authority to refuse to pay bills per MGL Chapter 41, Section 56. Additionally, Finance Department has an internal policy that covers this issue.
Okay, so again, I will call for a motion to eliminate policy number 2304.
I will make that motion.
Second?
Second.
Robert seconds. Any discussion? Robert?
Did you have anything you want to say? I don't want
I'm
to
good.
steal everyone's thunder.
No, you're good.
No, so I recognize that, that the manager approves the warrant. I actually kind of like this policy because I would like to have the opportunity to kind of just see what's going on with the budget and what's going on, and I've, up to this point, been records requesting because it wouldn't be provided. So I don't think it's bad for the selectmen. We're not in a position to say, no, you can't pay this bill, and I think Amy even said in the communication about this that, it's not technically, it doesn't technically violate anything to wait a week. I just like the ability of the selectmen to kind of also have an awareness of what's going on with the town finances.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Policy is for us to be able to hold an item for a week. By law, we're not allowed to do that, which makes the policy null and void, really.
Well, we're not allowed to not pay the bill. Not paying it for a week isn't the same as not paying the bill.
We don't have the authority to refuse to hold a bill.
It's a policy. I mean, if the manager didn't listen, the manager just doesn't listen to it. It's just a policy.
But the policy violates the Massachusetts general law, so that makes the policy null and void.
Your own communication didn't say it violated the law. It actually said it didn't violate the law.
No, it says that the MGL, Chapter 41, Section 56, gives the authority to the town accountant, not to the Board of Selectmen. So the Board of Selectmen don't
Yeah.
have the authority to hold a warrant, an item, at all.
I think we can agree to disagree. I think we both expressed our views, and I
Okay.
respect your view.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments? I'll call for the vote. Aim?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes. Let the record show 3-2. Policy number 2304 is no longer in effect. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We still have a couple minutes. How about vote to set a winter parking ban? Who takes the- Oh, that's me, right?
Yeah, it's you, yeah.
All the way to H.
Yeah.
All right, so we are looking at setting the winter parking ban here. And the parking ban reads as follows. On-street parking is prohibited between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. The parking ban will also take effect when there is an accumulation of 3 or more inches of snow, day or night. 15-minute parking is allowed for postal and package delivery. So I'm looking for a motion to make our parking ban starting November 15th and ending April 1st.
I will make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote.
Yes.
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 I'll vote yes. Let the record show the parking ban has been approved from November 15th to April 1st. You want to accept the donation from the food shelf? We got time to do that.
Yep.
All right. We have a donation of $3,000 for the food shelf. I'll read it as follows. The motion is this. I move that the board vote in accordance with MGL Chapter 44, Section 53A, to accept the $3,000 donation from the Oxford Ecumenical Food Shelf to the Oxford Community Center. So I'm looking for a motion.
Make that motion.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Tim?
I noticed, so, has there been donations in the past like this from the food shelf to the OCC?
Yes.
Is it normally the same amount, like every year?
Yes, there's not a regular tenant fee, so to speak, because remember, it's a private entity, nonprofit entity. This is their way of showing good faith to the town.
I think during times right now, I think it's beneficial for the food shelf to keep this money and for the town to absorb the cost. I think with high food prices, I think people need all they can get right now, and that $3,000 could certainly go a long way.
Can we do that? Could we-
Well, I think that they have a board of directors, and they wanted to do this to benefit the community center. It's something that they have a long-standing relationship with. I wouldn't want to second-guess their board for wanting to make that donation. As much as we all want to do our part to support the food shelf, I think at any given point in time, they understand that if they had to rent a building and do all of this in a building in which they had full responsibility for, including electric costs, fuel costs, that they would be even much more hard pressed. So this has been something that's been going on for years. You know, the board can do what they want, but I think if that was a question, we probably should have asked their board of directors ahead of time. I just only say that because they will have organized their thoughts around why they wanted to do that.
Robert?
Mr. Chairman, in response to the manager's comment, we could always just defer this to another meeting to, hear back from them, their ideas on it. I mean, I kind of am coming from the perspective of kind of your money's no good here because the food shelf does provide such an enormous service to the community. And they only use the community center for a couple hours a week. So, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Okay, how does the rest of the board feel about deferring this and going back to them and asking them that we're willing to work with them this particular year? I guess that's what it sounds like the discussion's going. Dennis, you got any comment on that?
I don't care.
Amy?
I'm with Dennis. It's a little weird.
All right.
Would you be looking for a chairman, or a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Well, what I'm looking for is, I'm kind of leaning towards going back to them and asking them if, and I don't know if I'm causing anything here that, from a legal standpoint, but, and it would only be for this year, is to ask them that we tell them that we're probably willing to reduce it for this year, provided that they put the money towards food. Just ask the question, see what they think.
I'll ask
All right.
it of our director as well.
Yeah, ask it of the director and just see if, if we're in a position to do that. I think that makes sense, and then we'll have a final answer. So I guess I'm looking for a motion to defer this to the next meeting. Jen, would that
We
be?
can just skip it.
Yeah.
We can just skip it?
Put it on the next
Right.
agenda.
We're skipping it, guys.
Yeah, I would
Okay?
just like to make one last comment, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought, so never mind.
It happens, wait till you get old.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, so we're going to leave it this way, that Jen is going to talk to the director and of both committees, and, I mean, they still might want to pay us, which is either way, but we got nothing to lose by asking the question. All right, so we're going to skip that one. And now, we're on to the next two. So, to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest, I'm not going to participate in the two public hearings. And I will be leaving the room, and when you are done, you can give me a phone call.
I will do
Let me
that.
know. Okay, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Amy. Don't hit anybody with this now, just this is what it's for.
All right, I'm going to read the public hearing notice for the record. In accordance with the provisions of the Oxford zoning bylaw, Chapter 18, the Oxford Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing regarding an application from S&K Development LLC, 710 Main Street, P.O. Box 744, North Oxford, Mass. 01537, for a special permit for earth removal on land located at 19 Oxbow Road, Oxford, Assessors Map 09, Parcel A21. The public hearing will be held before the Oxford Board of Selectmen regarding this matter on November 1st, 2002, at 7:15 p.m. in the second floor conference room of the Town Hall, which is located at 325 Main Street, Oxford, Massachusetts. Written comments from the public will be accepted prior to and at the hearing and will be submitted into the record at the hearing. This legal notice may also be viewed at http://masspublicnotices.org. I will now take a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make that motion to open the public hearing.
And second
Second.
vote,
Yes.
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 and I vote yes. Public hearing is now open.
Good morning, members of the board.
Good morning, if you can just,
My name's
state your name
My name is
and,
Attorney Robert Hennigan. I'm an attorney in Worcester, Mass., and I represent S&K Development LLC, who has filed the application for earth removal permit this evening for your consideration. I thought I might just make two brief comments to give you a little bit of input as to where this comes from and how we are here. Back in March, April of 2021 to September 2021, S&K had filed for an application for an earth removal permit, which was denied in September of 2021 by the then sitting Board of Selectmen. That decision was appealed to the Worcester Superior Court, and it has been in litigation since that time, and I have represented S&K during that litigation. In the past several months, I've had communications with your town council about the possibility of having the Superior Court remand this case back to the Board of Selectmen for reconsideration in light of some new information that had come up relative to distribution of the materials that's on site, which may overcome some of the concerns that were presently presented back in September through or the previous several months before that. So that, by way of a joint motion to seek the approval of the Superior Court, Town Council and I petitioned the court to remand this back to the board, and the Superior Court's given us a 60-day window upon which to do that, beginning September 12th. So it's very fitting that we're here on November 1st, and I thank the board and the town manager and town council for their cooperation with us in trying to see if we can't resolve this entire matter. But what before you then is that application again for you to consider in light of whatever you want to consider, and hopefully we'll be able to address some of the concerns that came up before and certainly answer any and all questions that we have. We have the project engineer, Mr. and Mr. Smith. Both Smiths are here. They do talk to each other even though they're sitting on the sides of the table, but I would let these smarter people than I to proceed at this point in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Mika Lasala. I'm from S.J. Mulaney Engineering, and if the board, probably better if I read the August letter that we had written, kind of give you an idea, because mostly the board was not here for it. The Board of Selectmen had opened up the public hearing back in April due to the restrictions with COVID, and we had continued into a hybrid meeting June 1st. Following the June 1st meeting, it was requested that additional information be provided, and we had supplied that information regarding the existing wells in the area and the abutting septic systems. The additional information was added to the June 15th version of the plan. The original plan was from March of that year. The public hearing was then held in person, and I'll kind of go through the main issues that a lot of the abutters had, the main and the board as well. One of the first questions was site distance. They were concerned with the site distance leaving the site and additional factors. The abutters were concerned with additional truck traffic on the road. Noise considerations were given, and the condition of the roadway being degraded. The Board of Selectmen also made requests for possible repairs to that road and maybe make a contribution towards the upgrade of the road. Following that, we met in August with Jared Duvall, the BE DPW super, and discussed some of the mitigating measures that could be met to meet some of these concerns. In particular, with the access angle to the property, if we could maybe access the abutting property that is owned by the town, it would reduce some of the truck traffic with one of the abutters, it would allow a gentler approach, and would respect some more of the buffer with the abutting properties. So, if I may, I'll go, would the board prefer to see existing pictures of the site or go right to the plans? I don't know what your preference would be. Would you want to?
You guys have a preference? I
whatever.
wouldn't mind seeing some existing pictures. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, however you want to present
Okay,
it,
okay,
please.
so just give an idea of where we're at. Actually, you know, I'll do an existing. So this is the Locust property. North is up on the page. This is Oxbow Road, and this is Route 20. This is an existing earth removal project that was begun approximately 20 years ago. A cease and desist was issued by the board for violations of the conditions of the permit. In particular, the conditions that were violated were the operating outside of specific days, quarterly reports not being presented, sanitary facilities not provided on the property, and gates and fencing to secure the site. The proposed applicant is proposing to revitalize or complete the earth removal project that was begun on the property, addressing the concerns that were previously raised by the board and were the cause of the cease and desist. So here, there's an existing earth removal that was started in clearing on the property. I'm gonna, give you an overview. I'll put the photos. Let's see. This is the view from the street. This is Oxbow Road looking into the site. The resolution's not that good. As you can see, that's McDonald's home. That's the house on by Route 20. The site is not stabilized, erosion, cobbles. Some saplings have started growing in some of the areas that were cleared. There's rubbish, just discarded materials everywhere. Some concrete manholes. Dirt bikes have been going through there and ripping it up. And again, you see cobbles, and this is one of the access paths on the site. This is on the property looking towards Oxbow Road. This is the existing berm that's there. Right in here is the area that the town had done an earth removal project several years ago and had reclaimed that land. And this is the area where we were suggesting that we could potentially do an access point. And the reason that I mentioned that is, I'm going to go to this photo. Here you can see this is the current Oxbow Road and the access into the site. And obviously the road's in poor shape. This is Oxbow Road, that's the McDonald residence. Over here is the parcel that the town owns. And this is just a picture inside what the existing condition, leaf litter and just kind of an unstable property. Let's see. I think we had. This is on the top of one of the higher points. Is an existing construction shed here. There's some arborvitaes that have been planted. This is Oxbow Road and Route 20's beyond. And this is just the steep slopes that are there. There's various sheds and discarded material from the previous operation from 20 years ago. And this is on the kind of more on the northerly side toward the rear of the property. A lot of it's unstable and it's erosion occurring. Saplings. This is facing north. This is behind is the Lutzen property. And this is one of the access ways in the back. As you can see, it's just partially completed. So, plan. Oh, I went too far. Thank you. So one of the proposals we had provided during August that I was referring to, that we met with Jared, this is the proposed earth removal project, working within the 50-foot setback, the red line being the boundary of the property. We're respecting the 50-foot setback to that, doing 2-to-1 slopes. And the amount of material that's being removed from here is based on the soil testing that was done previously for the original permit from 20 years ago. What we've introduced on this site now is just some site controls for stormwater and erosion. There's a little stormwater basin here and here to catch the runoff from the site before it enters Oxbow Road. And what we had suggested on this particular plan was, there was concern with, as you can see, this is the access drive that's currently there. If you pull out of here, it's kind of a blind turn, and it's hard to negotiate that. So we were seeing if the board would be open to an optional access drive here. It would need to cross the town of Oxford property, and we need a temporary access easement to do that. And it would reduce about 500 feet of travel on Oxbow Road. Concurrent with this project, we had, it come to our attention that Mass DOT was working on Route 20, and there was speculation as to the exact timing of when that would take place, and material be potentially from this removal project could be used for this reconstruction. Mass DOT is proposing to reconstruct this intersection, provide a signalized intersection here over the next few years as they're working on improvements to widening Route 20, adding shoulders and making the travel lanes a little bit wider than what they are. And there was concern with the previous board about access off of this site, that this is a dangerous intersection currently, and how are we going to mitigate getting on here, that we're going to need details, we're going to need to coordinate with Mass DOT. But now they're in a position that they are going to be doing that work. So from a timing perspective, this is a much better timing profile. Because originally the town allows the earth removal permit to exist for 5 years, and that was a point of contention, that how long is this going to keep going? And we really could not say, because we didn't have a potential use for the material. Now we have a more not set in stone, but a more of a realistic potential use for the material, and could expedite the process. And this is the proposed plan that how we had it, what we presented to you, where we're coming out in this location, but that was our option, was to come onto the town of Oxford land. We do have 29 feet of frontage here, but if you utilize that, we are going to be taking some of the King properties screening that currently exists there if we access that point. So our proposal was to come right over here to retain that buffer of vegetation. So with that, present to the board if you have questions of the overall project.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was the only one on that board, so I have quite a few questions. You said something that you fill, you've got a place to go with the fill? Was I misunderstood with that?
Potentially, there's a potential, because the potential for,
So you're still going to go out that way onto Route 20 in that lousy corner? I mean, we're
That's-
talking large trailer trucks on that corner. We're not talking a little vehicle. Yeah, unless you have a detail, unless you have somebody out there directing, I see a nightmare happening there. And again, I still have a concern. I had a concern then, I still got a concern now about our road. I think it'd be much safer to go, you're gonna have to go up there, take a right, go all the way down Route 20 if you wanna come back the other way and make your turn anyway. So why don't you go Oxbow down through Charlton, right to the light? A lot safer. Would make me feel a lot better. It would not impede as many residents, wouldn't kick the crap out of our roads, which I know you're gonna. You're talking about truckloads that you're hauling down there. I know Jared he's great, but I think the condition of that road is gonna really be beat up by those trucks going down the road. So those are still my concerns, and
this is the locus that you're suggesting. You're suggesting that we go this way through here,
yep,
all the way to the signalizer.
And then you can go anywhere you want. So wherever you're taking that fill, to me, because if you take a right out of that road right now, it's a nightmare. I mean, I know I've tried to come out of there
I don't
in
disagree
my
with you.
car, and, so I'm thinking of, good-sized trucks. That's why I just see it, to me, more sensible. I'd have no problem with this if you went that way and went to the light. So I'm just, that's always been it was a big concern of mine back then, and it's still, for some odd reason, I thought, maybe it was in my, when we talked to our lawyer, that I thought your fill was going to Charlton or might be going to Charlton, and to me, that would be a good road. But I don't know, maybe I heard something I didn't.
Jim, could I speak on that?
Sure.
Jim Smith. I've been in contact with W.D. White, the one that actually has the contract for the
The road?
Route 20.
Yep.
I couldn't enter into anything because I didn't have a permit with him. But he was looking for that gravel. So I think it would be in coordination with the intersection that's being built right there. So the idea would be
This
to.
intersection
Right.
here.
So to minimize the truck traffic altogether, because like anything else, the cost of doing business is with trucking is the trucking.
Yeah.
So the idea would be, I believe, the conversation would be, once we have a permit, that I would most likely have him bring it to that spot. That was the idea.
What spot? What do we,
Right, so they're
being the
they're
same place? gonna-
within 1,000 feet of the site. So I don't even know if we would be even entering onto Route 20. So the
I
idea is
get what
that would be utilized right there.
Oh.
And
Kind of where the stone wall is type of thing.
Right, that whole
maybe
area
right
is
in that
is
area
low.
there.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And it would be a win for them, a win for us because of the construction, a win for the town because it's right close to the site.
And the expediency of it. I think that was one of the other contentions.
Right, that was,
Was the,
one thing that I couldn't say was when we were gonna have this project done. And
Right.
I didn't have someone that was lined up that wanted the gravel. So I didn't want to tell anyone that would have it out in a year and
They
it dragged
still
on.
can't either, because they don't know when they'll.
They don't,
have
right,
20.
but it's, right, but most likely they'll be the buyer, and when it happens, it'll happen right for them.
Okay.
So it'll probably be dormant until they go, and then once they take it, they'll probably take all of it, is what I didn't have that before last time we were here. I didn't want to lie to
So
anybody.
you mean you won't do too much work until that time? What do you mean by dormant?
So probably nothing this season right now, because
Okay.
they're still in the prep of it.
it wouldn't be till next spring.
It would probably be in spring. And then the whole entire reason for the site is to clean up that site so we can get 3 just nice residential lots. And the quicker they do it, the better it is for all of us. So, that's all.
Once you start, how long will it take you to clear that?
Okay, I wish I could tell you it would take 3 weeks, but I can't. But right now, it's a much different scenario than if someone needs some septic sand. You know what I mean? It's
Or general fill.
or general fill or whatever they're gonna use that for. I have someone that, I've spoke to 3 people. One, a broker who says he wants it all. Like, you never know with a broker. And then a gentleman from Pine, and then Peter from W.D. White. So I believe it's gonna move, and it's gonna move quickly. I don't have a contract in hand because I didn't want to enter into anything until I had a permit. That's all. So that's as truthful and as much as I can tell you without, making up a story.
Or making a promise that you can't keep.
Right, making a promise that doesn't happen.
But you may not be going with the state. You might go with like Pine or somebody else.
Well-
That's a possibility.
Our motive will be to get it out there as quickly as we can. That's my
Right.
motive from day one. So I'm assuming the state's gonna be a lot more proactive on wanting it, because we'll be the closest site for them to pull gravel from. It's just logistics of it. We're close to the site.
Yeah, but the state is so darn slow. I mean.
Right, but I know the gentleman that actually is managing the job. He actually came to our building, was looking to rent some space. And I've worked with him before at PJ Keating. he understands it, and I think, you know, like anyone else, they'll go for the easy first, which I think we're gonna be the easiest site to remove gravel from, proximity-wise.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yes, so this is kind of a technical question. So my understanding from the bylaw, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's supposed to be, the map's supposed to depict the topography 100 feet from the earth removal, but for some reason on the north side, it looks like it's only maybe 50 feet. Could you explain why that is?
On this,
Yes.
they didn't trespass on that property to get the topography. It's someone else's property, so we didn't have permission to go on that land. But the grade up here, this continues. This is a hill, so it,
Additionally, I watched a lot of the hearings for this previously when it was with the board. You can even see my little box on Zoom. So my another question I would have for you is, I believe you had said previously that SK Development is not going to be developing these properties, that you were just looking to have 3 saleable lots for someone else to develop. Is that still the case?
we plan to build them.
You plan to personally build the lots? The applicant had mentioned that the fill could be used in the immediate area. Is that really realistic, 75,000 cubic yards in that immediate area?
I haven't seen the plans for the DOT with all the extent of the work that they're doing, but it could be.
Okay.
Because, I mean, they're doing a fairly lengthy project. But
So, looking at the final proposal, you know, I wouldn't expect you to have a 3D rendering, but kind of my feeling looking at this is that this is going to look like, for lack of a better term, kind of like a pit, because you have kind of a steep grading on one side, a shorter steep grading on another, then another steep grading in the back.
correct.
And it was kind of confusing to me as to why that would be desirable, you know, for development, because people's views would be of the side of a hill. So I was kind of,
We would need
that's
to
not
come-
really necessarily in the scope of this, so if you don't want to discuss that, I totally understand, but.
That's- Yeah, I can clarify. What we have here, again, we're based on what was done here previously, the soil testing that was done, and again, what the feeling of the town is, there would be a berm here, approximately 30 feet high, that's right there. We would come before the board to have this removed and lowered, so it could support septic systems in the front. Because currently, the abutting wells are in the back, along the perimeter here. So we wouldn't want to put septic systems over here, we want to put wells in the back. And to begin this process, this opens up this area, neatens it up, gets it more level, that we can work on this front portion here. So yes, you're right, it's going to go up, down, and then it's just a gentle thing, and then there's gonna be basically an esker along that front, that we would need permission also from the town to potentially do some grading and maybe improve the swale, because currently with the photos, you got the edge of pavement, and it goes right up. From a snow storage, snow plowing, maintenance, there's no open drainage swale on the side of the property. This would enable improvements to be done to Oxbow Road from a drainage perspective.
So if I could just restate, so you're saying that you plan on coming back separately for the removal of that?
With the
That
house
earth?
part, I was talking to Jared about this, what would be the best approach, that we can come back with a earth removal, not alteration, when we actually carve out the lots. Once we've done septic testing to see where the change in soil occurs, where water table is on this section here. We know what it is in these locations, but I have not done testing to confirm that there isn't a large piece of ledge or something of that nature. So we have not gone out into the street, and we would need to get some flaggers and do additional investments to make that work. But before we even get to that, we wanted to see if the town would be open to allowing us to do this portion of it, and then come back to the board with a modification, or go through the planning board with a terrain alteration permit.
Can I follow up on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Would that be the only location that you, in order to build the houses, would that be the only location for the septic systems?
Realistically, yes, right in here.
So at this point, it would be unknown if you could even build?
Look, by looking at the soils out there, I think we can, just because it's the nature of what's exposed with the exposed bankings, you can see what the material is in those locations.
So, I'm just gonna say this is kinda out of our purview. I mean, when it comes to the housing and everything else, that would go through
Right.
zoning and planning, so we're getting kinda off track here. So we can get back to just this part of it. I'd appreciate it.
Did you have another follow-up?
No, that's it.
I was going to ask the applicant, and if you don't have the answer, maybe our DPW director was. So the original 2003, I believe, permit, was that for the same, basically the exact same plan, or are you not familiar with that?
I didn't have copies of the plan. I had the application, the testing, some of the reports, and it was not clear with what some of them. But essentially, that was they were respecting the 50-foot setbacks to the property line, which is what we're doing right now.
So you're not aware of how much volume of earth they were looking to remove?
I don't have the numbers. I don't have that information.
Madam Chairwoman, if I may, if the DPW director could come up and give us an answer to that question if he has it.
Selectman Frick, through you to the board. I don't actually have the previous volume. I don't know what they had applied for previously, nor do I have access to those plans, or did I have access to those plans ahead of the meeting? I didn't review those in full transparency. Was focused on review of this. I was going to wait for the board to discuss and come back. I had a couple things that I wanted to address, but I just wanted to come up and address your question, Mr. King. So.
Yeah, thank you to the DPW director. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. The reason I'm asking this question, and you may want to have your attorney respond, is I'm not looking at the scale of this project and the fact that a quarry is not an allowed use in this zone. It's kind of ambiguous to me where you draw the line, because I see that the application talks about, getting permission from, I believe, from the fire chief for blasting. And obviously there's abutters who reside nearby, and it's 70,000 cubic yards on such a small property, and the state that the property is left in at the end, where it's there's a dramatic reduction in the altitude. My concern is that we're kind of allowing a quarry in a zone where that's not really allowed. And if your attorney would like to speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. King, I'm going to respectfully decline to address that. I think that is properly a question, and a proper question, and a good question, to request an opinion from your town council. I think that's probably the person who would be best answer that, because he and I may differ on the answer to that question, and obviously the answer that you would want is from your own town council. So respecting that it's an interesting question, I'm going to decline to answer it and request that be asked by you.
Madam Chairwoman, I'd just like to state that I'm not seeking his legal opinion, just as advice. I'm not seeking you as to counsel me. I'm asking what the applicant's position is. I'm assuming it would be no, it's not a quarry, and my question to the applicant would be, well, why? Where would the applicant draw the line, if you're comfortable making such a judgment?
And again, I think that's a question, if we can provide you with an answer with, I'm not prepared to provide an answer for it at this point. In that context, we would be happy to provide an answer as to our thoughts on that. But the answer would be initially starting out with no, obviously.
So you're saying you would need more time to...
Just an opportunity to respond to that, if that's a question that you think is necessary for determination on this particular question. Unless you can...
I know the note you're referring to. If blasting ever occurs, it's a standard note that we do put on. If blasting ever occurs on a property, you have to go to the fire department. It's just a boilerplate note that we have. Based on the well casing depths of all of the neighbors, the well that's located right here on 13. Bedrock was down 38 feet. King property, it's 35 feet. This, the car above, forgive the pronunciation, there, well, the bedrock was down 108 feet, and house number 6, house number 6 here, which is down lower, bedrock was 43 feet at their well, which is down here. So I don't believe that we're gonna encounter bedrock, and that I don't anticipate a need for blasting, but again, it's a standard note that we put on the plans.
Can I approach the board? Just because we won't blast.
So
the
could you
whole
come to
purpose
the
of-
microphone, please?
Over here. The purpose of, I mean, it's deceiving on the ground from a plan. But if you look at what the town did on that corner piece, that's kind of how we're going to leave it. A nice flat pasture, for the most part. The slopes are what the slopes are in the back. Can't change those because we couldn't keep going because that's someone else's yard. But the whole purpose of this is to create a flat and usable area. Blasting would be cost prohibitive. We're not looking to mine. All we're looking to do is to create a usable area that eventually could be developed. The site right now is a mess. It can't be utilized how it is. I mean, it's a liability the way it stands right now. All we are trying to do is bring this to a point that's actually will be a nice, usable area for house lots down the road. So, I mean, blasting isn't even an issue. If it came to the point there was ledge out there, we'd stop. It makes no sense. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I may, just a perspective, let's say this was carved into 3 lots, is what the goal would be. The town of Oxford's limit is 500 yards without a special permit for earth removal. The amount of material to carve into the property, 500 yards is equivalent to 23 by 23 by 23 foot box. The grade is over 30 feet high. Just to carve a driveway, and we'd already exceed the earth removal restriction. And that's 500 yards within a 10-year period. So we'd have to wait decades to take this material out, not to exceed that.
Go ahead.
What do you do on the north side where that land goes up and how do you stabilize that
This is,
topography over there?
so the grading that we have here is per the town bylaws of 2 to 1. That would be erosion control fabric, and then loamed and seeded.
So it wouldn't affect the,
No, it'd be stable. Right now, soil, the natural angle of repose, this white right now is beyond what soil is stable. And you can see the lip of the trees hanging, it's eroding because it's been left as is. They didn't put it to the 2 to 1 that it was supposed to be.
so you would slant that off and then seed it, I mean,
Yep, erosion control, netting, there's various techniques that can be done to stabilize that.
We good?
So the reason I ask about the gravel, and additionally, it had come up previously about the marketing of the gravel and kind of what the revenue expected was. Is there any update on that? Anything you'd care to say about that?
I don't have.
I can speak on that. So we're currently doing a smaller project in Auburn. We started at $2 a yard. Because of fuel costs, even with a contract in place, the gentleman came back to us and wanted to bring it down to $1.50 a yard in the bank. This is not a huge amount of money. This is about getting to the end product of having a nice usable land. So I don't know I haven't reached into negotiation with anyone else because I don't know what the exact material is. But that'll be whoever comes in, they'll test it, they'll decide, is it common fill? Is it septic sand? That's to be determined. So, but right now, what we've been paying is $1.50 in the bank a yard.
I think I'm finished for now, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank
Did you have anything?
Jim? Thank you. Do we have anybody from the public who would like to speak? Butters, you can come up and use the microphone over there. State your name and address.
My name's Mark Walker. I'm not a direct abutter. I'm at 11 Oxbow, very close though. I can see it from my yard. And most of my concerns are the same they were last year. Doesn't sound like many of them have changed or been addressed in detail. With the noise concerns, the smoke and the exhaust and the smell, and I had it all documented last time. I didn't want to spend a lot of time going through it again today. We have new neighbors that just moved into 13 Oxbow about 2 months ago. They were unaware of what's going on and what the plan was. They did give me a letter to hand to the Board of Selectmen, which I could hand over.
Thank you.
There's also another neighbor at 7R Oxbow who was unaware of what's going on, what the plans are. He was pretty concerned as well. He'd like to know a little bit more about what's going on. I haven't really had a chance to meet him because he moved in just recently. I understand that we're just looking to level it out, get a couple of house lots in there. But again, my concerns are, what we were told initially was 5 years of this, plus then looking to extend it. It's kind of like being held hostage for an unknown amount of time. The talk of possibly using gravel for this other project all is just up there in the air of maybe. There's no, yes, we're going to use it for that. It's a hope. My concerns are that falls through and this just becomes something that drags on and becomes a long-term problem that I have to deal with day in and day out. So I'm just going to keep it short and sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I will read this letter from Joseph Bartikoff and Courtney Schultz, who reside at 13 Oxbow Road. Town of the Board of Selectmen, we are writing to voice our disapproval of the proposed special permit for earth removal on the land located at 19 Oxbow Road, Assessors Map 09, Parcel A21. We believe this will increase noise and environmental pollution, be unsightly, and further damage the surface of Oxbow Road. These issues will cause decreased property value, not only for our home, but the whole neighborhood, and lead to reduced property tax for the town. We would like to avoid a vote on this matter, but if so, we will vote against the special permit for earth removal. From Mark and Pamela Walker at 11 Oxbow Road. My concerns are the same as stated at the previous hearing. Extended period of time to next permit open, extensive noise and disruption due to unloading, loading of trucks and heavy equipment, as well as dust, fumes, and noise while work in process. Request to possibly extend beyond the already long timeline planned. Further damage to already damaged and poor condition roads. No action taken yet over last year, and to clean up current conditions, debris, hazards, chemicals, etc. Why is this being discussed again after a decision was previously reached to not approve? Will this be a yearly task? Are there any other comments from the public? Anybody else would like to speak? So I guess, Jared, can you have some statements that you'd like to share with us?
Thank you. I just wanted to touch on a couple things that I had overheard here in the proponents' initial comments. I spoke with a representative, D.W. White, today. Been privy to the fact that DOT has been in the contract award phase on the larger Route 20 corridor improvements project through much of the past couple months. As of today, I spoke with a Mike Tomasello over there, we believe to be the project manager from D.W. White. He said to his knowledge they had not been, he's not saying they're not interested in the material, just to let the record state, certainly that if it's proximate to the site, it could be advantageous for them, but had no knowledge of conversations, at least when he circulated today in his office, with regards to supplying or this being a source of material That's just what he told me. They, as of today, don't even have a contract themselves from Mass DOT for the project, so nor do they have a formal notice to proceed on the project. It's anticipated that they'll get it, it's forthcoming within the next week or so, but that being the case, they're not authorized to spend any funds on the project or enter any contracts for materials or whatever it may be. So that's how this would work, right? A contract of this magnitude, for any material supply aggregate products, they would contract directly with the general contractor, not MassDOT themselves. I heard a little bit of talk about the construction at the intersection of Route 20 and Oxbow Road. That things have changed from earlier plans there. This was a design-build procurement, so not your typical design bid build. So basically, design-build entities were a combination of a general contractor and engineer. They were actually submitting proposed design changes through the procurement process, one of which is to actually put a roundabout at that location now, not a traffic signal. For what it's worth, but that's not been solidified yet, so there's still some design work and approvals to be done to construct that. Based on my understanding of the project and talking with both folks at DW White, Mike Tomasello, and folks at DOT, I just heard today that we're going to have the pre-construction meeting towards the end of the month. So in terms of anticipated start date, I don't anticipate anything appreciable happening this year. And then with a project of this magnitude, as well, even not something of this size, even a smaller project, you start with the underground stuff first, right? So the town sewer utility work that is now lumped into that project, drainage, any sort of underground utility work will happen first. So I just want the board to have like a realistic expectation, basically, of the progression of work, which kind of drives the need for material as well. So it doesn't mean necessarily they're just going to blow the whole thing open and have a need for a lot of material. So I just want to keep an open mind to the time frame for which material will be needed. That's all. I had enclosed in my memo for tonight's meeting previous memorandums, assuming that and noting that this proposal hadn't changed since last year, assuming that most of the residents' concerns and what we had talked about last year was still going to hold true. So a lot of our previous analysis with regards to truck trips, costs for reconstruction of the roadway, that all still stands, with the exception that obviously any roadway construction costs, everything's gone up in the past year. So I provided a new estimate based on a couple different limits depending on if this were to move forward, maintaining the original access point, a little over 1,400 linear feet, roadway reclamation at a cost of about $170,000. If the board, if this project was going to be looked at in the affirmative, and there were special conditions imposed, let's just say hypothetically, and the alternate access point over town property was considered, that would reduce it about 480 linear feet or so, so the cost goes down to about $113,000. I think last year we had said that was about an $80,000 project, so you can see the costs have gone up considerably on a linear foot basis. What else did I want to note here? I think those are the primary points that I just wanted to, for the sake of tonight's hearing, in my memorandum I had submitted earlier today that I wanted to note, but I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have as well.
If they're going over the town property, are they gonna put in a road on our property? Or just?
I would expect it'd be a gravel access way with in a combination of an anti-track pad at the road, just to prevent any sediment, getting onto the road, any sediment, mud, that sort of thing. We'd also, and I had commented on this earlier, if that were to be the case, that I'd suggest that we go to town council just to get a proper instrument in place or a temporary easement, whatever it is, and make sure the town is indemnified for anything that may occur if they were to be using that as a point of egress, over town property.
Questions for Jared? We'll let Rob go first.
Okay. Jared, my recollection from previously was that there was a proposal for a test well at the low end of the property. Is that accurate?
They had, in my discussions with the proponent as well, there was a proposal for monitoring wells before, during, and after construction. There was concerns from the residents at that time about arsenic, about impacts to their static water levels in the wells. So that was vetted pretty thoroughly. I did note, in my comments, from my perspective, an engineering perspective, not as a hydrogeologist or anything, that it looks like that likely minimal, just considering the overburden, considering that the site that we're talking about here, the elevations are much higher than the, essentially the highest wells, and Mika had referenced the casing depths and well depths and that sort of thing. But I did want to note, it's really beyond my expertise to comment definitively. I just lent my opinion on in that regard. Arsenic's tough to pinpoint as well. It can be naturally occurring via bedrock and things like that. So it's tough to pinpoint a culprit for that, just to be aware.
So the test well was proposed at what would be the south corner of the property, or I'm not familiar with
I don't
that
recall
location.
exact locations, but I think that would be, it was a series of monitoring wells, and I can let, was it one? Well, I think that's something that I had pointed to being included as a special condition too. You know, the amount, at least that there was a minimum, monitoring well on the site. I don't recall the exact location.
The only reason I ask, and obviously I'm not an expert, is I would have thought that it would have made more sense to put the monitoring well if you were looking for drops in level at the high end of the property, because then you would be, it would seem more likely to observe a drop in the level of the surrounding property's wells. But that's just for what it's, I don't know what you would say
It may
to
serve
that.
to have more than one, high and a low. Yeah, there could certainly be merit to that.
I don't have any other questions for Jared, do you?
Dennis? No? Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
Last chance for public comment? Okay, I will look for a motion to close public comment.
I will make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second that.
Vote, yes.
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 And yes. So, it sounds like we might have questions for town council.
I don't know that I need to hear from town council on it. I've kind of looked at some of the case law on it, and I kind of, I kind of need to be convinced by the applicant, to be quite honest. So looking at some of the case law, like Henry versus ZBA of Dunstable, and things of that nature, like Old Colony Council, Boy Scouts of America versus ZBA of Plymouth. I'm looking at this as, this is a residential area. The as-of-right use is residential, but the scale of this project is not incidental to me. I mean, the scale of this project is massive, and so I look at that and I say, well, how is this not a quarry? And I really struggle to come up with a reason to say this isn't a quarry in a residential area, because, the applicant wants to market the fill. So there's and I recognize that the applicant's business is not normally gravel distribution, as far as I understand. Maybe that's not the case, but I look at this and I see a very large earth removal project that at the end, hopefully, houses can be built there. And that's kind of where I sit on this. So, and then obviously, I mean, when you look at the criteria for rejecting this nuisance, one of the criteria for rejecting it, and I don't think anybody would argue that the quantity of truck traffic that's going to be required to do this, and then, the noise associated with all of the equipment, the dust associated with the equipment, the prolonged nature of this, since they need to find a place to go with the 75,000 cubic yards. I don't think that would be a very difficult thing to say that this wouldn't be a nuisance to the neighborhood, in my opinion.
Tim?
I think after reading everything, I think with the duration of the permit, I've reviewed some of the stuff from before and watched some of the meetings and whatnot. I follow along some of the same lines with the amount of traffic that's going to go in there, and I know the noise was a big deal, and given the elevation of this compared to the rest of the properties around, I don't see any way to mitigate that. I don't see any way at that elevation with the machinery working that there's a way to stop that with fencing or walls or anything. So I think the residents have some merit on their complaints.
Dennis, do you have anything to add?
Not at this moment, no. I still have concerns. I mean, it sounded great when they were gonna be able to do mass dot, but I question that too, because I just know how long it's taken just for we've been talking about this project for I don't know, 3-4 years now that it's been in, and we still have to put in sewerage, like they said. And, you know, they're gonna wanna take that fill out, you know, they say not this year, probably not this year. So, you know, in the spring, MassDOT ain't gonna be ready for this in the spring. So that still brings me back to my comment about going up and taking a right. I just don't see the sensibility and the destruction of the road. I mean, you're talking an awful lot when you look at the number of truck travel per day estimated. They're talking in total, triaxles, 12,500 trips to and from. That's a lot of truck traffic, a lot of truck. So, I don't want to vote on this at all tonight. I don't know what the rest of the board wants to do, but I need time to really.
I'm comfortable waiting if the applicant would like, after hearing kind of us reflect on this, you know, if the applicant wants to take some time to try and address these concerns, I don't have an issue with that.
Okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was going to say that if you don't arrive to that, you would want to make a motion to continue the public hearing. If you can select a date now, then you would be wise to do that, but if not, then you would have to determine, you know, that would be in the motion.
Okay.
Madam-
Yes.
Before we do that, just, I wanted to make sure anybody else had any things they wanted to say, just so the applicant has time to prepare, and obviously if the applicant's attorney wants to weigh in. Madam Chair, do you consent?
Well, we closed the hearing, so the public can't speak
All right.
anymore.
Uh,
Technically.
That's true. That was a mistake.
Well, so the chair, in my view, the chair can, with your discretion, hear from.
Right, I was gonna
I said,
finish
but if you don't want to.
Discussing.
The chair,
Yeah.
the chair.
discussing whether or not we wanted to continue the public hearing to another time and how long we might want that to be. And I understand that there's a time limit, so we'll get to that part too. Do you have a time frame of when you think you would be?
A couple of weeks would be fine for me, or, you know,
trying-
I mean, I'm not looking to elongate this. I'd like to see
Our
what
next
they could
meeting is
do
on the-
about, you know, again, the thought process of taking a right. That would then not have to go across town property. They could come out of their site where they are now, take a right. I don't know, maybe I live on another planet, but it's so much easier to go right that way to a traffic light. Traffic light, you go either direction. This way here, I see it as a nightmare. I just see a big nightmare there. And that's my biggest, it was then, and it still is. Because you're just gonna, you know, kill that road. So anyway,
15th?
that works for me. Yeah.
Could we hear
Also
from,
make sure, that, Madam Chair, that you have not just the date, but a time certain.
Yes.
We needed to finish this within 60 days of the date that it was remitted back to us.
Okay.
Those days right.
do you want to propose a date?
Madam-
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'm going to say, first, we would welcome the opportunity to respond to the questions and so forth, so we thank you for that. In terms of the 60-day period of time, I'm sure that we can approach the judge and tell him that we're in discussion and seek some additional time for that. I think
Oh, thank
your
you.
town council would certainly join me in that. I think the court probably put the timeline so that we, you know, just don't let it sit forever. So I don't necessarily see a problem with that 60-day time period. But we would like the opportunity, would welcome the opportunity to come back and answer some of your questions and maybe address some of your concerns and see how that works out.
So we good with the 15th?
Next meeting is the 15th.
15th?
I'm fine
good
with it.
Both of,
Everybody
is the
can be here.
15th good with you as well?
Yes.
So I would take a motion to have this public hearing continue to November 15th at 7:15 PM.
So moved.
Second.
And the vote?
Yes.
Robert?
Second, yes, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
It's the first Board of Selectmen's meeting I've been at with a shelf full of rifles. It did cause some intimidation when I first arrived. Thank you all.
On to cannabis cultivation presentation. Is there somebody here from, are you guys the cannabis people? Yeah. Come on out. That's okay. No, Norman was, yeah, he's doing this one as well.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was just about to call him too.
I don't mean to interfere.
Chair, this item has been placed on your agenda. I have recently had some discussions in my office with the proponents for a new cultivation business. Being pursued for a particular cultivation license is Jonathan and Jenna Androlowitz of Procure Development LLC of 120 Schofield Avenue in Dudley, Mass. Obviously, they also have attorney present here with Nick Adamopoulos, who will hopefully be able to lead us into a presentation. We thank you for your patience as we had an extensive hearing prior to you.
Thank you for having us. My name is Nick Adamopoulos. I'm an attorney out of Webster, Massachusetts. Here with me today is Jenna Angelevich and Jonathan Angelevich. They are the members of Procure Development, which is ultimately the entity that is seeking approval to enter into a host agreement with the town of Oxford concerning a micro cultivation and a manufacturing of adult use cannabis. I can tell you that at this point, Procure Development is integrated into the cannabis industry in Massachusetts. They do have host community agreements in Dudley concerning a large-scale cultivation at 40 Fish Road that is currently in the process of obtaining final approval to start building there. They also have a host community agreement for a dispensary in Dudley on Hall Road. Ultimately, this would allow them to move into the craft cannabis portion, which we'll get to in a second, but also become vertically integrated so they could go from cultivating the product to manufacturing it to also selling it. And they would be partnering up with an individual that from the West Coast who's been doing this at full scale already, including on both the craft cultivation side and on the manufacturing, especially the manufacturing that we'll get into, which will actually speed up the process if a special permit and host agreement is entered into with the town of Oxford. The location is the building on the far left side, which is building 3 of the industrial park. They'll be utilizing the back portion of that. Sorry. So on the, these are just the front and rear photos of the building. It would be the back end on the right-hand side, 50% of it to be utilized for the craft cannabis, and then they would be placing these manufacturing pods, I believe, on the right-hand side towards the trees. They are pre-furbished manufacturing. We'll show you an example of how that looks in a second. So craft cannabis is different than some of these grows are going in and doing 30 to 100,000 square feet under their host agreements and their tier licenses. This is becoming similar to kind of craft beer. You are ultimately focusing upon certain strands and strains of the product to ultimately get the best position from that flower and ultimately marketing it to a select audience out in the general public. So you're not just mass producing and ultimately just saying we're going to flood the market with this and manufacturing it, and we're not really caring about what the level of the potency is and what the strain is. So as the industry has been evolving in Massachusetts, and as more and more of these large-scale cultivations have come on the market, the craft cannabis is now becoming a focal point for a lot of the retailers because they understand that their audience is looking for a very specific type of product. And by being able to both the craft cannabis grow and the manufacturing very closely, you can make sure that you're bringing that fresh product over to the manufacturing side and getting out the pre-rolls and tinctures and edibles that the audience at this point is ultimately looking to receive in the general public. We just have a quick floor plan of what the cultivation would look like, how it'd be broken down into different mothers and vegetation rooms, and then post-harvest before it exited the building into the prefab manufacturing. Obviously, if we were able to move forward and go before planning board seeking a special permit, we'd have a very detailed floor plan. We'd also have to give the floor plan to the CCC as part of architectural review for them to make sure it meets all their criteria. The good thing is that utilizing both Procure's current stance of going through the market and the CCC process, along with their partner on the West Coast, they understand one, the design phase and also the flow of getting the product as it ultimately goes from a sapling through its full growth stage to post-harvest. So flow in these is very important, and making sure that these rooms are airtight and closed off so that there's no cross-contamination in case there was ever an issue with some sort of mold or contaminant in one room. It wouldn't ultimately lead to losing the entire product inside the building. Manufacturing would be almost complete at this point with the availability under state law. So it would be the vape cartridges, the concentrates, edibles, and pre-rolls, ultimately, which are at this point, flour in a retail store accounts for about 45 to 50% of the market at this point. And then the other 50% of the market is ultimately all these manufactured items. So the focus on this would, because it's a craft, would ultimately be geared towards manufacturing the vast majority of the cultivated product at this site to put it into an end product rather than the flower. So manufacturing would be a little different than maybe what you've seen before. In most manufacturings, it's build out a new facility or build out an existing facility to do it. Individual that they are working with on the West Coast has already utilized these prefabbed manufacturing vehicles. They ultimately look like the back ends of 18-wheelers that get placed on the ground, and they already have everything built into them, from all the security that would go into them, including the exhaust systems, odor mitigation. It's already all done. So if we were able to get the community host agreement and the special permit, and we're able to just procure these, we would drop them and they'd be ready to go immediately once cultivation came online. Additionally, we would be able to utilize these manufacturing pods while cultivation was going through the process of growing, because there is a lot of product out there at this point. So if a third party wanted to sell some of their existing trim or flower, the manufacturing component of this could take that into the system and start making these edibles, vapes, and like products. I think one of the big things is that these have been engineered, certified, and stamped for all 50 states. So we actually have some data behind them to make sure that they would meet all the criteria that the CCC would need, and make sure that once we present all this to planning board, for example, for a special permit, all that information we provide to them so they understand that the containers would satisfy any sort of concerns that they may have.
Are they on the outside of the building, these containers?
Yes, so they would be attached, they'd be almost attached to the building, so the product would be grown inside and then come through a small corridor into these on the exterior side of the building.
And these would be secured?
100%. Yeah. And we'll get to security in a second, but they would definitely have to be secured under both the CCC. We give all that information to the fire chief and to the police chief, and ultimately, when we go before planning board, we'd ask about whether or not where they'd want any sort of gates put up, fencing around, to ensure that they are happy with the security around it.
Thank you.
We'll just go through the odor mitigation. One of the biggest issues that people bring up, odor mitigation has drastically changed over time as it's become now a national industry. These would have HVAC systems built into both the manufacturing side and into the cultivation side. The HVAC systems would have charcoal filtrations built right into them. The charcoal filters ultimately clean the air as they pass through. Further, what we would do, and what I normally see in any special permit that gets issued by a town in the future, is that they would put a time period on cleaning up any sort of complaint that came from the town to the applicant, and the cost of having that taken care of would obviously be on the applicant. But these charcoal filtrations are ultimately the number one use now to filter out any sort of smell, and as long as the applicant stays on top of making sure those filtration systems are being turned over and maintained, the odor issue goes down. Now, we're also talking about a very small cultivation here, somewhere around that 5,000 square feet of canopy size. So you're not talking about a building that's going to have somewhere between 30 to 70,000 square feet of plants in it. It's much smaller, and the HVAC systems that would be put into the building would be able to handle that odor. Security, ultimately, as I'm sure you guys are aware of by now, some of these products already inside your town. Security is heavily regulated by the CCC. We would be using a third-party vendor, Citronics. They are well-known in the industry. They've done many of the projects around Oxford. Ultimately, what they do is they'd be fencing around the property, cameras inside and outside, lighting that would secure the outside, fob systems within the inside. All the employees go through training to make sure they understand what would happen if there was any sort of intruder. The police chief would look at the plan prior to any planning board meeting to make sure that he has vetted it. We'd make any changes that he brought to our attention. But we'd also give the police chief the option of having the camera system hooked up to the police department. So in case there was ever an issue, the police department would be able to bring those cameras up on themselves and see what's going inside the property. The CCC has 24/7 access to those cameras to ensure that they can access to it and there can be no blind spots. So a lot of the cameras ultimately cover the same areas more than once. So in case a camera went down for some reason, that area is made sure to be covered, and they mandate that there are backup generators on the property to ensure that if there was a power outage or someone tried to cut the power to the property, that those camera systems security measures would ultimately be maintained during that period of time so that the applicant could address that in a timely manner. And then highlights to the community, it would give an opportunity for new economic growth and utilization of that property. Applicants from Oxford would be given hiring preference. There would be an educational course for the cultivators. I can tell you from my experiences that a lot of cultivators that come in and start from the beginning ultimately graduate up to managers of the property or become what they call master growers, and then ultimately move on to either new states that are coming on the market or to bigger projects. So it is an educational experience for a lot of the employees that start off the ground level and kind of learn their way through and get their hands-on experience for it. And as of right now, the community impact fee is still in place for a 3% fee of any gross revenues generated from this. And if any sales tax is ultimately garnered from the manufacturing side, or if flower is sold just directly from the cultivation side, the town would be entitled to the 3%, not from just a community host agreement part, but ultimately the CCC and state regulations would allow for the town to get the 3% tax on that off the top. As I said, they do have current licenses in the state. They are going through the process of making sure that they can build those sites out. They have special permits in Dudley, and they've been in a long process of working with this individual on the West Coast to find a town that will be able to accommodate a small cultivation with this new sort of manufacturing in place. One, it'd be very cost effective, but it would also ensure that this project gets up and going in a very timely manner rather than drawing out the process and holding a community host agreement hostage or not moving the project forward. So that's kind of an overview of the project. Ultimately, we would answer any questions, and ultimately our hope today is that the board would give us approval to negotiate a host agreement with the town manager, which would allow us to go forward and hold our community outreach meeting, which would allow us to reach all the abutters and place in the newspaper to answer any questions the public had.
Are you cultivating and manufacturing for your retail business in Dudley?
Yes, one of the facilities, yeah.
So does that, I know the 3% is from something else, but the sales tax, does that come through, or is it a pass through, you know what I'm saying?
If it gets sold from the manufacturing to the entity, it would be, the tax would go on it. Right now, the retail's not up, so with the manufacturing would be the first thing that would come up just because it's already prefabbed, so.
Right.
There would be the 3% tax generated almost immediately upon issuance of the special permit and getting those projects in here.
But when the retail goes up, because it's intercompany, so you wouldn't pay sales tax, am I
The
reading?
That's true, but the vast majority of entities do sell it because there are tax advantages currently due to the IRS Code 280E, and certain things can't get deducted on the retail side, they can get deducted on the manufacturing cultivation side. So, a good example is Webster, for example, has a very large cultivation and manufacturing. They don't have, the entity that does that actually has a retail store here in Oxford. They do sell it to the retail stores rather than just transporting it over.
Oh, interesting. I was just curious. Questions?
How many jobs you think new jobs, this facility might raise?
I'll defer to John.
10 to 20?
10, 20?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is, you gotta remember, it's craft, so it's much smaller than
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of the facilities you'd be looking at.
I was
with-
just curious.
Yeah.
Do you have to be specially trained, education or something like that, or is
Close to the
this?
training program.
Yeah, but you don't have to
No,
go
you
to
don't have like a
college
school
or,
degree or anything.
yeah, that's, so the regular Joe is somebody that could get a job here.
Yeah.
and-
Correct.
Or Mary, I shouldn't use that
Maybe Dennis.
connotation. No, not Dennis, no way. Thank you.
Through the chairman, are these pods in use anywhere in the state of Massachusetts at this time that you're aware of?
That I'm aware of, but I can ask our partner if he knows of any.
And ultimately, what we would do is we would bring, he has these existing out west, so we would, if we did our site plan review at that point for the special permit, we would bring all the images of that and all the data with that to them to ensure that any issues that they may have are addressed. I can tell you that there are at least 3 other towns that I represent people in that have been looking into things like this because it's so cost effective now.
It's like a quarter of the cost of a typical manufacturing facility, and they're turnkey.
Could you, if you'd like, could you come to the microphone just while we're asking the questions, just so the public can
Jonathan
hear?
Sorry.
So the pods, Madam Town Manager, do you want to?
Yeah, I think the chairwoman would ask him to come up to the microphone because she's the chair, but I just.
I was
think
just
it's-
speaking through the chairman.
No, you didn't, but for that question, but go ahead.
So the pods, is the intent that they're mated with the building where the shipping docks are, or is that not really worked out at this time yet?
Ideally, we would,
Front and rear. That way.
so yeah, this is the back of the building. There's a side entrance over here, a secondary side entrance. We would probably put the pod right here and actually tie. We'd have to build a small little hallway, but they would be technically connected to the building.
So it would just be one pod then?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You just gotta remember, it's that
They're like a
post,
sea container. They look like a sea container
Yeah.
more or less. Yeah.
it's post-harvest, so the product's already been cut down, dried,
Right.
and cured, so it's coming out, it's kind of smaller bundles than if you're carrying out the entire plant. So it's already been taken to that state. That's why a smaller door would be accessible for it.
Right.
This is actually a question for Dennis. So we have a subcommittee. Was that only for the previous RFP?
That was, yeah.
Okay, so we don't have, maybe this is more the manager can speak to this. There's no RFP out for this specific,
No, that was for retail only.
was that because there were just so many applicants, why we hadn't, and
No, it's because you only had one license and you had a desire to make sure that we had advertised it in a way that we would have the candidates be able to come forward in one attempt. Here, there is no restriction, for cultivation and manufacturing. And so, therefore, it's a matter of, do they find a place within the marijuana overlay district? And in this case, they have. I mean, the one thing that I would impress upon the board is that sometimes with very large-scale cultivation facilities, yes, you might get a new building that goes through a permitting process, and it might be, new real property tax that comes to you. But with large-scale operations comes many, many other kinds of considerations to the immediate abutters and to the town. So This is unique in the sense it's small. We had some, active discussion about that. We have already approved a small manufacturing business to remove seed oil, and, those kinds of businesses have not seemed to have the same kind of concern. But they are legitimate businesses, and they are part of the manufacturing cultivation licensure candidates that can go forward to the CCC. So, in my opinion, I think it's, taking an area that's already has a building, repurposing it, and now perhaps even bringing in state-of-the-art confinement of a craft cannabis, which we could be put on the map for doing that. Obviously, we have other boards that would determine the kinds of requirements and accommodations that the site would have, but no, so there is no restriction for people to come forward. The restriction we have is in a narrow area to be able to offer, actual marijuana cultivation business.
Madam Chairman, if I ask of the town manager, so my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was that the community impact fee, that there was kind of some pushback from the CCC about how long for a duration that can go on, and so could you speak to how long we could realistically expect?
So,
as a
can I
community?
just,
No,
I
if
don't
you
know
would like
that
to.
this is really, germane to what we're voting on. We're really only voting whether or not Jen, or the Madam Town Manager should get into an agreement with them, not the host agreement or what, the 3% or 5%, or maybe she gets 25, So I don't know that we need to drag this out with.
No, I was just going to say, because it's part of their proposal.
I get-
Yeah, oh, I
can't
understand
answer
that,
very
but the
quickly, like-
CCC is changing the regulations as we speak, so
Yeah.
we don't know what that's going to be when they're done negotiating. The CCC could go and say, well, that's 1% now.
No, I only brought it up because it's part of the proposal.
So just to address that, if you don't mind, Madam Chair.
Yep.
Currently, the cap's 3% of gross revenue. All host agreements statewide are gonna have to be renegotiated sometime probably in 2023 when the regulations come out. Ultimately, what the CCC regulations and the law that just got passed this past spring say is that for that 3% to come in now, the town actually has to demonstrate that it incurred costs up to that 3% limit. So right now, it's just 3% flat. That wasn't the CCC saying that wasn't the goal of the program. It was to address the town's any added expense they had due to the projects. That 3% would stay in for 5 years with the proof from the town, and then after the 5th year, if a host agreement is renewed and that business stays there, there could be no additional 3% fee going forward after year 5. That's the current state of the law, and what the CCC now proposes in its regulations that they plan on ultimately introducing in the first quarter of 2023.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Perfect, thank you. You good?
Good.
I'm going to entertain a motion to,
I'd make a motion to allow the town manager to enter into negotiations for a host agreement with Procure Development LLC.
a second?
Second.
Vote?
I just wanted to say, just for the community, I mean, it's in an industrial zone, so although, kind of cultivation facilities have, a reputation for smells, I mean, this is the sort of zone where you would want that sort of facility. So I just wanted to kind of put that in the public record.
Thank you. Vote?
Yes.
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 And I vote yes.
Thank you very much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Good luck,
Good
guys.
luck.
Good night.
Be in touch. Thank you, Nick.
Now, hold on.
I think she moved again. Do you want to go into a recess, Madam Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. We'll take a 10-minute recess to return at 10 minutes of 9.
Welcome back to our Selectmen's meeting. Next thing on the agenda, we need to request the American Legion Post is requesting a Veterans Day Parade for Friday, November 11th. I'll read the request. The Oxford American Legion Post 58 is asking for the board to approve a Veterans Day Parade on Friday, November 11th. The parade would be stepping off at 10:45 from the Senior Center. The Legion is planning 3 stops in the center: Town Hall, World War II Memorial, and Korean Vietnam Memorial. There will be honors and wreaths placed on each of the stops. Lastly, they will meet at the American Legion to honor and lay wreath at the Gulf Memorial. All parade participants and veterans are invited into the American Legion for a spaghetti and meatball lunch. And this is a request from the American Legion. Looking for a motion to set a parade day of November 11th, 2022.
I make that motion?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and I have a second. Any discussion? Guys are all set? All right, I'll call for the vote. Amy?
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. Let the record show 5 in the affirmative. Request for a parade on 11/22 has been granted. All right, next thing, we have a surplus request from the school department. I'll read it into the record. The school committee declared a vehicle lift at Oxford Middle School as surplus and is turning the item over to the board to do the same. Chapter 37, Section 1 of General Bylaws allows the board to surplus or transfer to another department having the use of the property. Request is made that rather than surplus this forward brand lift, model number DP10A, with a 10,000-pound capacity, the board will vote to transfer the lift to the DPW department since both of these hydraulic lifts at the garage are down.
I would make a motion to transfer the forward brand lift model number DP10A from the school department to the DPW department.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and I have a second. Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Yes.
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 I'll vote yes. Motion approved. Lift has been transferred. And let's see. All right, the next thing on the agenda is we have the town manager's report. Jen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item in the manager's report is to have the great opportunity to convey to the public that our office has been informed that it is actually going to receive a community planning grant in the amount of $25,000. This is great news. This technical assistance grant will be used to create a housing production plan. I know I had brought it up prior when we had actually filed it. I've included the actual application this time in the packet since we now have actually received the grant. Obviously, to have an HPP is one way we can better understand Oxford's housing needs and to help us create and identify strategies to reduce gaps in existing housing based on our community housing trends and requirements. Strategic housing production and planning has actually been a major component of our master plan implementation process. Long before this particular board has come to being, the completion of this HPP is going to be another important management and community milestone to achieve. Prior boards and also the town meeting have created a housing opportunity overlay zone and also has adopted some bylaws to encourage housing development, including a cluster bylaw development. I want to thank the planning board, and in particular Tony Souza, for their ongoing collaboration with the manager's office to obtain this important planning grant. As we get forward and we actually retain our consultant, there will be some opportunities, clearly for those people who are on these existing boards and many opportunities for the public, I'm sure, when we go through the survey and assessment process. Tony and my office will be heading this particular planning grant up, and I expect great results with that. The next item is to also convey that we've heard in a very short period of time on the heels of the community planning grant that we actually have heard from the Mass School Building Authority that they are inviting the town of Oxford with an affirmative vote that took place last week for us to enter into the accelerated repair program for both the Clara Barton and the Chafee school roof projects. This grant is actually very competitive. We had applied in a previous year and submitted our statements of interest, and unfortunately, the criteria was changed that year, so we qualified. We had done a lot of work in advance. We were not able to be successful because they increased the amount of years and age for roofs because they had so many applicants. So this year, we went forward with it, and we were able to meet the criteria. Only 16 communities out of 67 were selected this year, and we're one of them. So this is great news. The qualifying criteria hopefully will continue to allow some of our other schools which are aging in the future to qualify. But this vote really represents a major step forward in our capital planning process, and it's an important milestone which we can collaborate not only with state partners, but also our school district. And I want to thank the superintendent and Justin Ledoux, who obviously put a lot of work into this with the manager's office when we had to get both the school committee and the Board of Selectmen's votes, if you recall. So we're really excited. I was on the call with about 145 other communities that were listening to the board for the school building authority make votes at different phases of their projects. And I spoke on behalf of the town in accepting and being very appreciative of the fact that we're going to be awarded this assistance. There'll be many steps that come forward, including working with the MSBA for project coordinators that will actually put not only project and money and funding together, but there'll be requirements of the town as well. This is not 100% the state pays for everything. There'll be some steps, but there'll be major, this is a major announcement for us because it means that we don't have to be on the hook for everything. So looking forward to that as part of our capital plan. The next item is a retirement announcement, and I do have the unenviable task this evening of informing the board that I've received notice from Chief Sad that he will not be seeking renewal of his employment contract, but instead will be retiring at the end of June. After 40 years of service to the town, he wanted to make sure he provided us with enough advanced notice to plan for a successor. And obviously, this is very bittersweet news because he's been a tremendous leader as our chief and as a former officer who's come up through the ranks, and he embodies all that is really, truly exemplary in the name of public service. Obviously, I'll be working very closely with him to develop a plan for conducting a comprehensive search, and we will be sharing details and action steps together with this board and the community over the next 8 months to find the next Oxford Police Chief. He'll be before our board where we can befittingly ask the board here to convey their congratulations on making this decision with him and his family, but also having him had the opportunity to convey this personally to the community. He wanted me just to make this announcement now in this way, but we have many steps and opportunities for him to come before the board. The next item is the state election. The clerk has been really making sure that I know all of these little nuances of the upcoming general election. I want to remind everybody that the November 8th date for the general election is approaching. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Both the Chafee and the middle school polling sites will be open next Tuesday. Our election workers have already been working diligently in providing ample opportunities for voters to cast early votes as well as mail-in ballots. The voter registration deadline has passed. That was October 29th, and the vote by mail application request has now also passed on November 1st. But we do have in-person early voting still taking place, and that will conclude this Friday. So if you have any intention of not being able to vote at all, you're out of town on November 8th, please get to the senior center by 12:30 p.m. This coming Friday to cast your votes. Our election workers are there almost every day for the last 14 days, providing you with this opportunity. And also, the clerk has asked me to remind all mail-in ballot voters several things. First, if on the right-hand side, you'll see, I took an image of our early ballot request. And when someone requests a ballot, they have to complete the ballot and mail it back to the clerk. But people are forgetting to sign right above that address sticker, which would be the person who's requested it. They're forgetting to sign the top of that ballot envelope. They need to do that in order for their vote to count. So we're just putting out the reminder. We're doing it in several different ways, so that's really important. We have had over 2,000 ballots mailed out. We've only had about 1,000 ballots coming back in. The clerk asked me to implore the people, make sure you get them into our beautiful new secure voting ballot box outside the ramp here at Town Hall. And if not, just get them in the mail. And all ballots have to be postmarked by November 8th, and they need to be received by November 12th to be counted. So there's my election update. The clerk will be very happy for that, I know. And everybody in the office knows she's in there every day, making sure we try to get out the nuances. But hopefully that other 1,000 people that requested the mail-in ballots will either just be dropping them by or, hopefully make sure they drop them in the mail. The next item is to let you know that we now have our production media coordinator, Kaylee Olson, has worked hard over the last few weeks transferring all our programming to the new video on demand website. Now you can view all the content of the Oxford Cable Access, like our meeting recordings, school events, and more on demand, as well as watch our government and education channel live streams, all in one place. That means people will be able to see you. They did put together a quick little, I want to say, yes, here. Is it going to come up? There you go. All right.
Cable Access.
Thank you.
You can now instantly watch any past recordings with our new Video on Demand feature. Simply click
You
on
can turn that
Cable
up.
TV and then Video on Demand to see content from all three of Oxford Cable Access's channels. From government proceedings like Board of Selectmen meetings to educational topics like school committee meetings, we've got you covered.
Thank you.
And don't forget to check out our public channel to see all the great things happening in your town. So keep yourself up to date on all things Oxford with the brand new Video on Demand feature on the town website, oxfordma.us.
You know, I want to be able to convey to the public, we are working really hard to, one, put together an entire department, but two, take our opportunity to avail ourselves to anything that is more state-of-the-art than what we had since the moment I walked in the door. And so I'm really pleased with our progress. I think the public will have more and more opportunities to do things, not only to upload meetings, from our Oxford YouTube channel. They'll be able to do that till January 14th, and but then on January 14th in 2023, all the future content will be exclusively on our website, January going forward. That helps us manage it better, and it helps us be able to make sure everything is one spot, so that when people say, I want to get information about any particular program, board meeting, they can go directly there, and we won't be, paying those kinds of fees to be hosting the volume. If you look at the amount of just programming materials that our cable access has already done, it's pretty significant, and this will allow us to have all that content together, and not lose it in the future. So I would be happy with that. The next item is Veterans Appreciation Reminder. Yeah, I don't know what that was. The appreciation dinner, actually luncheon, is going to be for November 9th, which is next Wednesday. I just want to alert the board that we already have reached our capacity of 160 attendees registered for the two sittings, one at 11 and one at 1:30. Dave Adams and, of course, Laura Wilson, who is our Council on Aging Director and Senior Center Director, have been working very diligently. Not an easy thing to be able to put it together, and I know that it's going to be just terrific. So I want to thank you. I didn't know you were going to be here, so thank you directly, and hopefully board members will be able to attend, but to make sure you've let Dave Adams know, who is our Veterans Service Agent. And just to finally close here, for community events, for anyone who was not able to attend Scarecrows on the Common, I wanted to inform them to mark their calendars next year. It was a terrific event. The community center did a wonderful job and was very successful in expanding the event. You can look at just the pure number of scarecrows that were entered into. We had a wonderful vendor fair, and there was congratulations are in order for all the staff and volunteers who worked so hard to pull it together. And I know Shelley had worked with our production media coordinator to put together a very brief minute-and-a-half little snippet. And if we can play that, that would be terrific. And once again, just so that people can get an idea of what actually is going on there and the excitement for that.
Scarecrows on the Common, hosted by the Oxford Community Center. We have several scarecrows, we have children's games, vendors, our band just finished playing, and I'd like to thank P&D Pizza for their generous donation of free pizzas for everyone, and our vendors for coming out, our sponsors, the Cecilia Smolenski Millett Charitable Trust, and the Oxford Cultural Council. I'd also like to thank the town manager for conceiving the idea 3 years ago, and to all of the wonderful crafters who've put together the beautiful scarecrows. We will have winners in the categories of most creative, best town spirit, and funniest. And